Okay, let's talk about something we all kind of put off thinking about. What actually happens to everything you own after you're gone? It seems like it should be pretty straightforward, but in South Africa, there's a whole official operations manual that guides every single step. So let's get to know it.
Right? This is the big question that sits at the back of our minds. You spend a lifetime building something, creating value, but what are the official steps to make sure it all goes where you want it to? Who's in charge? And what are the rules of the game?
Well, the answer is found right here in this piece of legislation, the Administration of Estates Act. Now, don't let the name scare you off. Think of it less as some dry, dusty legal document and more like a detailed instruction manual. It's the official guide that makes sure everything is done by the book, from paying off the last electricity bill to handing over the house keys to the right person.
So yeah, getting familiar with this manual is absolutely key. And it doesn't matter if there's a super detailed will or no will at all. This act is the ultimate authority. It lays out the non-negotiable steps for what's called winding up an estate, which is just the formal term for closing out someone's financial life.
And here's the most important takeaway, the whole point of it all. The Act's main job is to protect everyone involved. It's a system built for fairness. It makes sure that before a single cent gets inherited, every last one of the deceased's debts and taxes are legally taken care of.
Every process like this needs a supervisor, right? Someone to make sure things are done properly. In the world of estates, that supervisor is the master of the high court. Now, they don't do the hands-on work themselves, but they are the official referee, making sure everyone else plays by the rules laid out in that manual.
And you can see here just how much power the master really has. They're the ultimate backstop. They watch over the executor, checking their work, and they have the authority to kick them out if they aren't doing their job properly. And crucially, they also protect the most vulnerable by managing something called the Guardian's Fund, which is for minors or for heirs who just can't be found.
Okay, so if the master is the referee, who's the main player on the field? That would be the executor. This is the person, or sometimes an institution like a bank, who is formally tasked with doing all the actual work of winding up the estate.
And listen, this is a really critical point. It doesn't matter one bit if you were named as the executor in the will. Until the Master of the High Court issues this specific official document, the letters of executorship, you have zero legal authority to do anything. This letter is literally the starting pistol for the entire race.
The Act is also smart enough to know that not all estates are the same size. So there are basically two different tracks. For smaller estates, anything valued at less than 250,000 Rand, there's a much simpler, faster process with a master's representative. But for the larger estates, that's when the full, formal process kicks in, and it often requires the executor to get an insurance bond to protect the estate's assets.
Once that executor is appointed, they can't just wing it. They have to follow a very strict playbook of duties that are laid out directly in the Act. And these aren't just suggestions. They are serious legal requirements with very firm deadlines.
So, at a high level, the playbook looks something like this. First, you have to tell the master exactly what's in the estate, every single asset and what it's worth. Second, you have to put out a formal notice to anyone the deceased owed money to, the creditors, so they can submit their claims. And finally, you have to prepare this detailed financial report, the liquidation and distribution account, which shows all the money that came in, all the money that went out, and who gets whatever's left.
And the timing on all this is incredibly strict. The law is so specific that death has to be reported within 14 days. That inventory of assets got to be lodged within 14 days of being appointed. And that super important final account, the executor gets 6 months to get it sorted. These are not guidelines, folks. They are legally enforceable deadlines.
Of course, any official operations manual is going to have some fine print, right? The Act gets really specific about the nitty-gritty details, especially when it comes to money and paperwork.
So first up, what does the executor get paid for all this work? Well, the law is very clear on this. The regulations set a maximum fee, and right now that's capped at 3.5%, which is calculated on the gross value of all the assets in the estate.
But wait, what if the estate keeps earning money after the person has passed away? Maybe there's rental income from a property or something. Well, on that specific income, the executor can charge a separate fee, and that one is capped at a maximum of 6%.
It's not just the executor who gets paid. The Master's Office, our official referee, also charges for their services in supervising the whole process. But to keep things fair, their fees are also regulated and are capped at a maximum of 7,000 Rand, no matter how big the estate is.
And the fine print doesn't stop with fees. Oh no. You absolutely have to use the exact prescribed government forms for everything, from the death notice to the final account. And for valuing big assets like property, you can't just guess a number. The Act says you have to use official sworn appraisers to make sure the values are fair and totally accurate. So after hearing about all these rules and deadlines and forms, you might be thinking, wow, why is this so complicated? Well, it all boils down to one simple but powerful word: protection. The entire system is designed to protect the beneficiaries and make sure the deceased person's wishes are actually honored.
And believe me, this manual has real teeth. This quote right here, from Section 54 of the Act, shows that there are serious consequences for not following the rules. If an executor is incompetent, dishonest, or just plain fails to do their job, the master can and will remove them.
And here is another huge protection baked right into the system. The Act strictly controls something called self-dealing. This means an executor can't just decide to buy the deceased's classic car or holiday home for themselves at a bargain price. That's generally forbidden unless they get very specific permission from the court, which, prevents some really obvious conflicts of interest.
Look, understanding this operations manual is powerful stuff. It gives you the knowledge you need to make sure the process is being followed correctly. And that leaves us with a final question for you to think about. Are you looking at all this to make sure you comply with the rules yourself? Or do you now see the tools you have to challenge an executor who isn't? The Act gives you the framework for both.